The year is 1410, and Europe is a patchwork of rival nations, alliances, and empires. But at its heart stands an unstoppable force, the Teutonic Order. A militant crusading group, this order had carved out a realm of formidable strength in the Baltic region, ruling over vast swaths of Prussia and beyond. For over 2 centuries, they represented untouchable military prowess and organizational perfection. But little did they know, their reign was about to face a catastrophic challenge, a moment that would ripple through centuries and forever alter the European map. That moment? The Battle of Grunwald. And if you haven't heard of it, buckle up, because you're about to witness how history turned on its head in a single day. First, let's set the stage. The Teutonic Order, originally tasked with converting pagans, expanded significantly during the 13th and 14th centuries. Their stiff discipline built a state within a state, complete with castles that dotted the landscape and armies that were the envy and terror of medieval Europe. Their neighbors? Hardly friends. To the west lied Poland, a growing kingdom led by Władysław II Jagiełło, whose union with Lithuania created a vast empire stretching from the Baltic to the Black Sea. To the east, Grand Duke Vytautas of Lithuania sought to keep his lands and people safe from the ever-expanding shadow of the Teutonic Knights. Friction always sparks where power overlaps, and by the early 15th century, tensions were at a boiling point. The Teutonic Knights were no longer just a religious order. They were essentially a state, one that imposed taxes and claimed lands sometimes by military invasion, often by political manipulation. Their expansion had displaced thousands, confiscated land, and even incited rebellions among subjugated native populations. But let me ask you, what happens when a force deemed invincible starts to believe in its own myth? That's right, overconfidence can be a silent adversary, and the Teutonic Order would painfully discover this at the hands of their neighbors. Meanwhile, Władysław of Poland and Vytautas of Lithuania, despite occasional disagreements, found a common cause: to halt the unchecked power of the Teutonic Order. Their alliance culminated in a militaristic masterstroke, the combined Polish-Lithuanian army. While the Polish king led the overall campaign, Vytautas managed an army that was a fascinating mix of pagans, Christians, and even Tatar contingents. Unity and diversity indeed. But could they stand against the walled city powerhouses and battle-hardened knights of the order? By spring 1410, preparations for war intensified. The Teutonic Order had long anticipated an attack. Hochmeister Ulrich von Jungingen, commanding the Teutonic Knights, rallied his forces, pulling knights from far-off German territories. Maps were drawn, swords sharpened, and banners stitched. On the other end, Jagiełło and Vytautas gathered an even larger force. Animated maps will show you the massive troop assembly. Polish-Lithuanian forces from Krakow to Vilnius, while a Teutonic defense line fortified near Marienburg. So, what led to the dramatic showdown? Put simply, land disputes and the thirst for dominance. Both armies finally converged near the fields of Grunwald, where the tension reached a fever pitch. July 15th, 1410. Remember this date? It started like any other summer day, but by the end, thousands would lie dead, and European power structures would be forever changed. The battlefield at Grunwald stretched wide, with marshes to one side and forests to the other. Early that morning, 2 enormous armies positioned themselves. On one side, the Teutonic Knights, in shining armor, hardened by years of crusades. On the other, the allied Polish and Lithuanian troops, swelling an estimated 30,000 strong, comprised of horsemen, archers, and infantry. Vytautas stirred his men with fiery speeches, and Jagiełło conducted last-minute changes to their plan, a pivotal decision, as we'll soon discover. Around noon, the fighting began. The Lithuanians charged first, encountering the more disciplined Teutonic Knights, who fought bravely with their heavy cavalry. Animated troop movements show the chaos, a swirling mass of horses, spears, and shouting soldiers. But wait, Here's the twist. Vytautas orchestrated what appeared to be a retreat, a classic feigned maneuver borrowed from Mongolian tactics. The Teutonic knights pursued, thinking this was the breach they needed. But following an army so rapidly risks overextension, and soon the knights found themselves vulnerable. Back at the main battlefield, Jagiełło commanded a decisive counterattack. His Polish infantry moved with precision, breaking through the encouraged but distracted Teutonic ranks. Ulrich, the Hawkmeister, fought valiantly, but faced relentless thrusts against his forces. By mid-afternoon, the tide was turning noticeably in favor of the Allies. Then came the final blow, a flank assault spearheaded by the returning Lithuanians. Imagine the stunned faces of the knights as they saw Vytautas's army, earlier thought vanquished, crashing into their rear. By sundown, the knights were routed. Hawkmeister Ulrich himself died in the fray, a tragic symbol of the downfall of one of Europe's most militant powers. In the days and weeks following the battle, the Teutonic Order fell into disarray. Their influence over the Baltic waned rapidly, and cities once under their iron grip began to defect. The loss of life was staggering. Some estimates suggest tens of thousands. But it wasn't just human costs at stake. It was political supremacy. The defeat marked a definitive end to the Teutonic Order's hegemony, as Poland-Lithuania emerged as the dominant power in Eastern Europe. But hold on. Let's step back and analyze the ripple effects. Grunwald was more than a battlefield. It was a lesson in the fragility of overreach. The defeat forced the Teutonic Order into a defensive posture for the rest of its existence, with Marienburg Castle falling within decades. Poland and Lithuania solidified a union whose influence extended into Central European politics and beyond. The battle also inspired cultural artifacts, songs, and even centuries of myths glorifying the unity of defeating tyranny. Fast forward to today, and you can still feel the impact. Many historians believe the breaking of the Teutonic Order paved the way for national identities in the Baltic region, influencing the eventual rise of modern states like Lithuania, Poland, and Belarus. It was a clash not just of armies, but of emerging nations yearning for self-determination against an archaic, rigid overlord. Additionally, Grunwald reminds us of the unpredictability of power dynamics. Who would have thought a move made in a swampy field would leave reverberations measurable centuries later? To conclude, the Battle of Grunwald wasn't just a turning point. It was an earthquake that shattered the perceived inevitability of certain powers. It redefined geopolitics, inspired new alliances, and reshaped the very identities of nations. The enduring decline of the Teutonic Order freed Eastern Europe to develop diverse political landscapes, forming the predecessor systems to modern-day democracy and sovereignty. Long after the last spear was thrust or banner raised, its repercussions still shape how we view determination, resistance, and leadership. The lessons of Grunwald are clear. Never underestimate the power of alliances, the importance of strategy, and the consequences of losing touch with reality. On that fateful day in 1410, walls cracked, nations grew, and a chapter of medieval history closed forever. Could this same story repeat in our modern age? Only time will tell. But let us remember, history rarely forgets a battle like Grunwald. This was history, bringing the tales of yesterday into the sharp focus of today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to learn more about the moments that made the world what it is today. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and remember, the past is always closer than it seems.